Today, we're gonna go over the footage we captured last week when we took the TRX out with the Raptor. It was kind of a cool day because we were expecting the TRX to completely fall apart. It didn't. It did actually held its own, but as we took a look at some of this footage, especially in slow motion, there was a couple things we noticed that were a little off. So in this video, take a look at all that slow motion footage and really kind of deconstruct and give you guys my thoughts on it. Now, by all means, I'm not a full suspension expert, right? I know leaf sprung's back in, I don't know link. I still wanted to give you guys my thoughts because we did see a couple of things from the TRX that were a little odd and stood out to me. And I'd like to get a lot of you guys' feedback on what's going on here. I kind of have my thoughts on it. I'm going to share that with you. There is some strangeness going on, and I think the TRX's weight has a lot of factor to do with it in the way it's performing. Let's get into some of this footage. First challenge we put to the TRX was a small jump. Now this is a very small jump. The reason why we picked it is because of this hole right here. It's got a big old hole, and basically this tiny little jump that you hit at slow speeds in the 40s, 50s basically compresses the suspension and shows you how it cycles through. First thing, we took the Raptor through there, and the Raptor went there fairly easy. It was fairly smooth, no noise, suspension didn't bottom out. Live valves handled that really, really good. Last time we took this jump, we did it with the 37s, and with the 37s, she completely bottomed out. Because to show you the extra load and the extra issues that 37s bring on. When the TRX went through here, first of all, TRX sounded really good going through here. And I mean, it sounded, the whine of that supercharger is so good. I mean, I can see why you TRX guys love it. It sounds good. TRX took that smooth. It performed very similar to the Raptor live valve shocks, and it went relatively smooth through there. So now let's take a look at the slow-mo video of this. Front end goes in, close to bottoming out, but not quite. You can definitely see it tuck into the fenders a little bit. Back end, definitely did not bottom out at all. You can still see the tire all the way there. I don't have bump stops here, so there's nothing limited from going all the way full tuck. And typical rebound, right? It comes back up normal, not all the way, and there you go. Fairly normal. That's what I would expect the Raptor to handle that area through. Now, if we look at the TRX, takes the jump, you get some tuck, actually very similar tuck than the Raptor does. Passes through, a little bit more tuck in the back end, but still it didn't tuck all the way, right? This is all very normal. I had about 150 pounds in my back end. His was empty with just a cooler. I think he had a small cooler back there with not much stuff in it. Typical rebound, fairly uneventful, right? It actually looked pretty good. Now, when we look at these side by side, you could see that the performance is very similar. In this shot, you can see that probably the TRX tucked in more than the Raptor. Just the way from the wheel wells look right there, you can kind of see that the TRX maybe tucked in a little bit more than the Raptor did. And the back end, it looks like the TRX was going a little bit faster. This was a problem all day. Because he didn't have maps, we went off our trip computers, and his speedometer was way off. While we were registering, say, 40 miles down the trail, he was registering like 38 or something like that. So his speedometer was slow, which resulted in him running a little bit faster, usually about 3 to 5 miles faster through these obstacles. So that's why it looks like he's going a little bit faster. Very similar performance, very similar tuck in the back, very similar rebound in the back. See, there's the rebound of the TRX, there's the rebound of the Raptor, right? Very similar. Now here's where things get a little funky, and that's when we start doing surprise dip. This is one of those situations where you're coming up on this dip, it's a complete surprise, and it compresses your suspension. 40 mile an hour is what we were shooting for here. We did this at 50 with the 37s, but back then we were modified, right? We had upgraded springs, we had all kinds of stuff. We didn't want to go that fast right off the bat. We wanted to find what that limit was, and we found that at 40 the live valves did really good, but unfortunately at 40 the TRX was already bottoming out, so we couldn't go much faster without risking major damage to his truck. So we ended up topping this obstacle out at 40. Now I did the test run. We didn't film the test run, but I did it just to make sure, kind of get an idea of what speed we need to run through. We ran it at 40, so the TRX went first this time. That sounded pretty bad. It definitely completely bottomed out. A couple things to show you guys here. Let me run the slow-mo and then kind of talk about it. That's pretty bad. It comes in, you can see the suspension drop. Front suspension completely bottoms out. I mean, like right there, you almost hear it in the clip. And then immediately, because that front suspension bottomed out, the back end whips. And I mean, it whips. It whipped down hard. All that weight up front overloaded the back end. It just whipped down super hard and completely bottomed out that rear end. Now here's where it gets a little funky. This is something that I thought was a little strange. There's no rebound. See how it just sits there? Then it finally rebounds. That back end took a long time to come back up. I mean, a very, very long time here. The Raptor looked completely different going through here. Notice that? We didn't bottom out. Raptor went through there like it was nothing at 40 miles an hour. We know that's the limit of what the TRX could do, so we couldn't go much faster. It wouldn't be fair to go much faster. Raptor went through smooth. And let's take a look at the slow-mos of that. Tucks in, just like you would expect. This looks a lot like how it took the jump. That small jump looked very similar to this, right? Front end tucked in for the most part, almost close to bottoming out, but not quite bottoming out. Back end didn't tuck in all the way, right? It did kind of rebound a little bit. It went down, but it reacted when it hit that section. And then as soon as it's done with that section, it hung there for just a little bit, nowhere near as much as the TRX did. And then it bounced back up, typical rebound that we normally get. Now let's see those next to each other. Oh!
26. Target.
Now here, I'm gonna show you guys side by side. Now here's where it's obvious the TRX was going a little bit faster than it should be. Now, he was shooting for 40 miles an hour, just like the rest of us were. He didn't actually hit 40 miles an hour, and you can see that in this clip. His speedometer registered 40. So I think the TRX speedometer is not as accurate, but he was definitely running through this section faster than the Raptor. Now, I'm not gonna say it's significant. This is slow-mo footage. I would say that he's probably doing anywhere between 3 to 5 miles an hour faster than the Raptor through this obstacle. So let's take a look at how that looks. Oh! I wanna show you guys a couple things here. So see how the tuck-in is very similar, but you could tell TRX is at full tuck. Raptor still has a couple inches to go. So that was a surprise to me, because the Bilstein shocks that come with the TRX are supposed to respond better, and because of that extra reservoir, they're supposed to be able to take bigger hits than the 3-inch shocks that are on the Raptor. The live valve shocks, we know those shocks very well. We know that they are slow. Ford's already addressing it in the Gen 3. New shocks are gonna be 300 times faster than the old ones, so we know that they're slow. One of the big limitations that I think the 2.5s have is even though there is that reservoir, even though it has all that extra volume, they're small. They're very undersized for the amount of weight that's in that front end. That front end needs a bigger shock. It needs more oil. It needs a larger reservoir. It needs larger lines. The lines that are on there are very small. But you can see it. It bottomed out. It bottomed out very, very easily right here. The Raptor still has maybe 1 or 2 inches to go on suspension travel, while the TRX has already bottomed out. And then here's where it gets odd. As soon as that front end bottomed out and started to rebound, immediately the back end of the TRX starts reacting before it hits the bottom of that hole. Rear suspension on the Raptor doesn't react until it hits the hole. Note, look at the difference here. The back end is already bottomed out when the Raptor hasn't even hit that hole. Part of this is a little bit extra speed, but also this is the weight. A lot of you guys that think that engine is a good thing, no. All that extra weight up front is a bad thing, and causes strange behavior like this where the back end just whips. And that's what happened here, right? You can kind of see the difference, right? Raptor goes in kind of smoothly. The suspension reacts based on what it hits. The TRX doesn't. The TRX, as soon as that front end bottomed out and it starts to rebound, it causes that back end to whip back down and overloads that back end. This is gonna be even worse once you start loading up that back end with dual tires and whatever in order to get the truck to track right. Because right now, when you're going down the road with an empty bed, that back end's bouncing all over the place. You're gonna need at least 300 pounds back there to kind of compensate for that heavy engine up front. That's gonna make surprise dips even more challenging on a TRX. And that's been one of my biggest worries about all that extra weight. That extra weight's not a good thing, guys. And you can see it here. Here's the next thing I wanna show you is how long that back end lingers fully compressed. Back end fully compresses here, and we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. The Raptor suspension finally went into its tuck. Not all the way, right? We still got a couple inches left on the Raptor. And look at that. The TRX suspension is still tucked. It doesn't start untucking until it gets to right about here. Right? And it untucks about the same time that the Raptor suspension untucks. But notice also the height difference too. Now, mind you, TRX is going a little bit faster. That's why it's 3 or 4 frames ahead. It's only about 3 to 5 miles an hour, guys. This is 240 frames. And there you go. Now, I will say Raptor does rebound more than the TRX. So there is one benefit to this, is that the TRX isn't rebounding as much. And I think that's kind of a good thing. You need to find that sweet spot on rebound. You don't want it to pogo right away, because that's bad. That's gonna just make you fly all over the place and buck and all that stuff. You don't want that. You also don't want it to be too slow that it just hangs there like this did. That's also bad, because what if there was another bump right there? Your suspension's already fully locked in. This is a little bit slow, but at the same time, at the back end, it didn't fully extend all the way. This was like normal riding height, whereas the Raptor was a little bit over riding height right here. Right, it had a little too extra rebound. Now, anybody that's driven a Raptor for a long time, the stock suspension does have a little bit extra rebound, a lot more than we'd like to see. And that's something that a lot of guys, when they rebuild their shocks, they do a different stack on there to help that rebound come into check. But I think the TRX's rebound is a little slow right now. Not sure if that's a problem with the valves. The way it holds right there doesn't look good to me. I could definitely see that being an issue on the trails, especially when you start getting into whoops and all that stuff. That might be an issue where that back end's gonna just be flat and it's just gonna hit the right two bumps together and that back end's gonna buck. Oh!
Target.
Alright guys, so that right there is my thoughts on the TRX based on our current testing. I think overall, guys, I think the TRX is a great competitor to the Raptor. I know a lot of you guys are like, well, you're the Raptor guy. You're sitting here making fun of the Raptor. No, guys, I'm all about going off-road and calling it how it is. If you followed me long enough, you've seen me call out all the stuff I don't like about my Gen 2. Gen 2 is not perfect, but I think in its current configuration, the Gen 2 is gonna outperform the TRX on the trails. I don't care what anybody says. That big old engine is a drawback off-road. It's not good. It's too much weight up front. And let me put it to you this way. At 450 horsepower, the Raptor can already outperform its stock suspension. How do you expect the TRX to handle better off-road with double the horsepower and the same suspension travel? Length is not gonna make a difference at that point, because you're still dealing with the same suspension travel. The Raptor at 450 already can do more than what the suspension can handle. Imagine what that's gonna do with the TRX once they start getting out there and start going off-road. There's not many guys off-roading their TRXs right now. I know a handful of guys and I follow all of them because I'm interested to see how the truck performs. Bold claim here, guys. I think the Gen 2 Raptor with its antiquated leaf spring back end will outperform a TRX off-road. I seriously do. Once the Gen 3 comes out, I think the Gen 3's new rear end with its new shocks, the extra travel, and its factory 37 support with an EcoBoost engine is gonna outperform the TRX. Yeah, I think the EcoBoost is gonna kick crap out of the TRX on the trails. And that's where it matters, guys. That's what this focus of this channel is. Our channel is all about off-road. It's all about getting our dirt therapy. I don't care about street performance, because on street, I drive like a grandpa with this thing. I can't take advantage of the full power. I'll get tickets all the time. And there's plenty of guys out there showing its street performance. Yeah, this truck is amazing on the street, but off-road, it's not the king. I've heard that term called so many times, the king of trucks. What's the other one? Oh my God. If I hear the TRX called a super truck again,
super truck for super truck. It's a super truck.
Super truck.
Super truck. Super.
it's not better than the Raptor. I think the TRX is a great truck. I hope to see more of those guys off-road. I want to see how it handles in different situations, but I think the Gen 3, when that comes out with the EcoBoost engine, is going to kick the crap out of the TRX on the trails. I think right now the Gen 2 is already a little bit better in many ways. I think it's going to be a better all-around truck. The Gen 2 also gets better fuel economy. One of the things we noticed on this trip is we started off with the full tank of gas. Everybody topped off at the same location. We ended up using far less gas. We were all running the same areas. We were all running the same speeds. After doing about 80 miles of dirt, the Raptors ended up with just over 3/4 of a tank. The TRX, on the other hand, with its smaller tank, mind you, our Raptors have a 36-gallon tank and the TRX has a 32-gallon tank. The TRX ended the day with just a little bit over half a tank. So it's an extra quarter of a tank. So to put that into perspective, if you have a scab Raptor with a smaller 26-gallon tank, you're gonna get about the same fuel economy as the TRX does. Now, there's a caveat there. I've been following all the reports on the TRX, and in sand, that changes. In sand, the TRX uses a whole lot more fuel, because you're in Baja, you're up in the higher revs, and the fuel economy gets down into the 2 to 3 miles per gallon, and it gets pretty bad. So in the sand, it's not gonna perform the same. It just depends on what it's doing, but it's gonna get far less fuel economy. So that's something else you have to keep in mind. You have to carry more fuel. You have to carry 10 gallons of fuel easily. Raptors can get away with just a 5-gallon, so that's a problem. All right, guys, so that's my thoughts. Go through the footage, guys. I'd love to hear what you guys think. That extra little bit of hang time kind of worries me I'd love to hear some of the more experienced off-roaders kind of put their 2 cents in. What did you think of that TRX kind of hanging there a little bit longer than it should? Is that a good? Is that a bad? To me, it seems like it's a bad, right? Especially if you're dealing with multiple bump situations like a wash or something. That back end being bottomed out is going to be a problem. So let me know what you guys think. Put it down in the comments below. Thanks a lot for watching. We'll see you guys on the next video.